be seated. We have been going through a series on women in the Bible, and we are continuing in that today. One morning, a farmer told his wife that he was going out to pick some of the fruit that was ripe out in his orchard. It was time. He needed to go out and spend some time in that orchard because everything was ready to go. He got an early start so he could warm up his truck. He needed some more diesel for his truck, and he was planning on going to the store to get some more diesel so he could get all the work done that he needed. On the way, he'd gotten in his car. His truck was warmed up. He was heading out on his little dirt road in his property, and before he could get out of the property, he noticed something that needed to be dealt with. He noticed that the pigs weren't fed, so he proceeded to pull the truck over, go to the corn crib where he found the sacks of feed. Beside the sacks were the potatoes that were starting to sprout. When he started to go for the potato pit, he passed a wood pile and remembered that his wife wanted some wood chopped and brought into the house. So he started to do that. He started picking up some of the wood that he had chopped, and he noticed that a chicken was walking by that didn't look really well. The chicken just didn't look right. So he dropped the wood, picked up the chicken, and started to deal with the chicken. Before he knew it, it was 12 o'clock noon. And the frustrated farmer had not even gotten to the gas station like he'd planned in the morning, much less out to the orchard to pick the fruit that needed to be picked. Everything that he had planned on doing, he hadn't gotten to because there was one thing after another. There was things that he'd missed, chores that he saw. Oh, I've got to do that. I've got to do this. And things just kept on piling up until he had gotten nothing done that he'd wanted to get done. Does that sound like any of your days? I've got to look at my calendar every day to go through my calendar just to make sure I don't forget to do the stuff that I know I need to do. If it's not in the calendar, it's not happening. And then there's 10,000 other things throughout our days that we are distracted by. We look and we're like, oh, well, we've got to do this, we've got to do this. Our lives have gotten so busy. I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. We make 35,000 decisions every day. 35,000 decisions every day. You worry about work, coworkers, work deadlines, bills, children, meals, vacations, house cleaning, cleaning the garage, cleaning the yard, cleaning up your kids, cleaning up after your kids, school, how to pay for school, how to prepare for retirement, which car to buy, what's going on in politics, who's commenting on your posts on social media, what phone calls you have to make, what phone calls you've gotten, what was going on in those phone calls, what not to forget about those phone calls. It goes on and on and on. 112 million Americans take medicine for stress or stress-related symptoms. That's about a third of Americans. Stress is shown in high blood pressure, ulcers, headaches, muscle pain, and heart problems. Busyness has become a bit of an addiction and sometimes even a status symbol. You're slacking unless you're slammed. Sometimes one phone isn't good enough. We need two phones. Isn't that hilarious? When you see somebody, they just like pull out all these different phones out of their pockets and like stack them right there, and you're like, who needs three phones? Well, they clearly need three phones. Our phones kind of tend to run our lives, don't they? What's the first thing you look at in the morning? Probably your phone. There's so many things on this phone. It's your alarm clock, right? And when your alarm goes off, the first thing you do is touch it. And then you wonder, I wonder if anybody tried to get a hold of me while I was sleeping. So we got to check that. Well, I wonder what the weather's going to be like. Well, you got weather right on here too. You check the weather. There's about 9 million different social media platforms. Got to check them all. You got to look at your calendar and say, all right, what do I have to do today? You haven't even gotten out of bed yet, have you? And you're like, okay, what do we got going on today? All right, oh, I got 9 text messages. Better go through and check those. These things have started to run our lives, haven't they? And really, these things are the cause of probably a lot of the stress in our lives, aren't they? We deal with all kinds of stress. How many of you have your phones with you? Pull them out. Let's see them. How many of you have your phones? Let's see those phones. Everybody's got phones, right? A lot of people have phones. Let's see those phones. Hold them up high. Who's got your phones here today? Look at these phones. All right. Our focus today in our Bible study is keeping our eyes on Jesus. So don't put your phones away yet. Don't put them away yet. Don't put them away. I'm going to challenge you today. I'm going to challenge you. Unlock your phone. And in order to pull away distractions, I challenge you today to power off your phone. And listen to, I can hear people already saying, wait, what are you asking me to do? You're asking me to do what? I can already hear the stress. I can feel the tension in church right now. You're looking at other people. Are you turning yours off? Go ahead. Hit that power button. I'm helping you de-stress your lives right now. Hit that power button. Turn that phone off. All the way off. Look at Doubting Thomas over here. All the way off. It's a little terrifying, isn't it? What if someone needs to get a hold of me? What if someone texts me and I need that text? What did you do in church 20 years ago? It wasn't as stressful, was it? But in church, you're like, well, who's going to get a hold of me? I might need to get a hold of somebody else. What if the pastor's boring? What if this sermon goes way too long? Listen to all the questions. What if this? What if that? We are so busy in our lives that we even struggle with disconnecting from the busyness. We kind of like the busy. It's kind of a little bit of an addiction. We're going to look at a story in the Bible today of someone who struggled with the same things, the same emotions that you just struggled with in deciding if you're going to turn your phone off or not. The busyness of life is sometimes a lot. Turn in your Bibles to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10. And some of you are like, my Bible's on my phone. I can hear you. So addicted to the technology. Luke chapter 10 and verse 38. There is a family in the Bible that you're probably going to recognize. 3 siblings. And the 3 siblings, it's 2 sisters and 1 brother. This feels very familiar for my household. So I have 2 daughters and 1 son. Luke chapter 10, verse 38, it says, "Now it happened as they went that he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. Jesus often went to visit his friend Lazarus at his home and to rest a little while. For Jesus, this home was like an oasis for him. Jesus always had crowds of people following him all over the place. Everybody wanted to see Jesus. No matter where he went, there was a crowd of people. Sometimes to get away from the people, he had to get in a boat. And still, people would find boats and follow him out onto the water with their own boats. For Jesus, going to the home of Lazarus and Mary and Martha was like a little bit of a vacation for him. Their home was a safe place for him to let his hair down. He could say whatever he wanted to say. There was nobody trying to trick him or trap him in the home of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. He always had to be on his toes when he was saying things, because someone was always trying to trick Jesus or trap Jesus. Not in this home. Not in this home. Jesus could relax in this house. Jesus could converse with his friends at this house. It was a little bit of an oasis. In Desire of Ages, the book on Jesus' life, page 524 and 525, it says, among the most steadfast of Christ's disciples was Lazarus of Bethany. Among the most steadfast, the most loyal of the disciples, of all of them, was Lazarus. She continues on, here he found a sincere, welcome, a pure and holy friendship. In these private interviews, these private times in their home, he unfolded to his hearers that which he did not attempt to tell to the mixed multitude. He needed not to speak to his friends in parables. Can you imagine what it would have been like to sit in the home of Lazarus and Mary and Martha with Jesus just in the living room there and hear Jesus talk like that? To see the peace on his face, knowing nobody was trying to trap him, and just conversing and shooting the breeze, listening, teaching. He didn't need to use parables. He could just say it straightforward. It was relaxing for Jesus to come to their home. Now, Martha seems to be the oldest of the siblings, the older sister. When this house is mentioned in Scripture, it's mentioned as being Martha's home. There's the outside chance that Martha is a widow. But nonetheless, this is her home, and her two siblings live there with her. Now, Martha she's a classic hostess, and she's a very good hostess. If you want a good meal, you probably want to go to Martha's house, because Martha's probably going to have a big spread, and you're probably going to eat well. But Martha's sister Mary is also there, along with Lazarus. Let's read a little bit more about this. In the end of verse 38, it says, a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. Martha welcomes, she's very welcoming. And isn't that nice to be welcomed into someone's home? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. Come on into the house. Doesn't it feel good to be welcomed into someone's home? And Mary's just waiting for Jesus to start talking. Mary needs to hear Jesus' advice, his take on things. Her heart needs this. And it says that Mary sat at the feet of Jesus. Now, this terminology is used multiple times for Mary in relation to Jesus. This story and the next two stories where Jesus and Mary are together, every single time, Mary is at Jesus' feet. Here, she's sitting there listening. In the next story we're going to look at in just a minute, when Lazarus, her brother, dies, she comes to Jesus. She falls at his feet and talks to him. The next chapter over, when they're having the second dinner. Remember the one with the expensive perfume? We'll talk about that in a minute. That was Mary, same Mary, and it describes Mary as going to Jesus' feet. What does it mean when someone sits at someone else's feet? What effect does it have on you when you are at the feet of Jesus? I don't know if you remember when you were a kid in school, or maybe if you're a kid right now and you're in school, you have a library at your school, and maybe a librarian reads you stories. I had a great librarian at my school, and we used to go in for library time, and the librarian would have us all sit down on the floor, and she had a chair, and she would sit in the chair, and she'd already picked out a book to read to us. And she would sit there, and she kind of lean this way to show us the pictures in the book. Anybody else remember that? And they would read you, and they would turn the page, and you'd see the pictures, and you would sit at the feet of the librarian and listen, right? And if you remember that, you were looking up into the face of the librarian, watching her facial expressions, listening to her enunciate the words, looking at the pictures. You were looking up and learning. What does it mean to sit at the feet of Jesus? Your posture is in a posture of learning. Your focus is on the teacher. It's a humble position. You're below them, right? It also means you're teachable. You're being inspired. You're listening to the teacher. And in every one of these situations, Mary wants to be taught by Jesus. Nothing else matters to Mary. And that kind of gets under her sister's skin. Let's continue on here. Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus. Remember, Jesus is a kind of a VIP guest, even though he's a very good friend. There's a lot of people who would like to be in that house as well, listening. He's a special guest. Mary is there. Martha is trying to prepare for this special guest. In verse 40 it says, "But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she approached him," being Jesus, "and said," this is kind of an interesting interaction she has here with the Creator. She's friends with him, so I guess she feels comfortable enough talking like this to Jesus. But she's a little irked that her sister's not helping her. Martha has all this stuff to do in the kitchen. She's got to be the good hostess. She's got to bring food. She's cooking. She's got all this stuff going on. And frankly, Martha could use a little bit of help. And her younger sister, Mary, is not helping at all. Now, I like to think in this story that this has probably happened before, because Martha completely bypasses Mary in this conversation. She doesn't even talk to her sister. She's done that before. It never works. Any ladies out there have a younger sister? Or a younger sibling at all? You ever try and tell your younger sibling to do something? How successful were you at it? Now, if you're a younger sibling, do you like taking orders from your older siblings? That was never one of your favorite things, was it? When your older sibling was like, "Hey, you need to do that," most of the time you're like, "Not a chance, you can do that." But Mom told you, Dad told me already, that goes, but nobody wants to hear anything from their older sibling, right? Martha completely bypasses Mary here, and she says, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to come and help me." Whew. I don't know if Jesus is used to being talked to like that. I wonder what everybody else in the room thought. I wonder what Lazarus thought. He's like, "Oh boy, the sisters. They're at it in front of Jesus. Can't believe she just said that. Jesus, don't you care that I'm doing all this work and she's just sitting there? Tell her to get up." Whew. Oh man, I'd have loved to be just a mouse in the corner, just to see everybody's facial expressions when she says this. The Bible says Martha was distracted, hinting that maybe she should have been with her sister Mary. Now, those of you that are hosts or hostesses and have guests at your home, you know the importance of being a good host or a good hostess, right? Hospitality. That has to happen. It's the right thing to do when you have guests, right? Make them feel special, provide for them. There's nothing wrong with that, right? However, with Jesus in the home, the scriptures insinuate that Martha should have put that stuff down for a little while. It could wait and sit down with Mary. Don't you care, Jesus? Tell her to get up and help me. Verse 41, "And Jesus answered and said to her." Now, I like to think when he says her name twice, Martha, Martha, he's good friends with her, first of all. We have to remember that, right? So if Jesus is dealing with a good friend, there's that sort of, you know them, you know what's going on, you know their personality. You know why they do and say what they do and say. And I have to think that Jesus kind of smiled at her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things." He knew that Martha was worried and troubled about a lot of stuff. Martha had a lot of anxiety in her heart. That's a word that I don't think we really used a lot when I was a kid, anxiety. People say, "I have anxiety attacks." I had a lady when we had Food Bank of the Rockies yesterday. I was waving people through, and as we were waiting, I was chatting with her, and she said, "Could you pray for me? I've got a lot of anxiety in my life." A lot of us worry and have a lot of anxiety about the stuff in our lives. We worry about a lot of stuff. Martha worried about a lot of stuff. Jesus knew her heart. Jesus knew the stuff that she was worrying about. He says, Martha, Martha, you're worried and troubled about many things. But one thing is needed. You only need one thing, Martha. Just one thing. You're worried about 1,000,000. You just need one thing. Verse 42. One thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part which will not be taken away from her. I like how Jesus didn't get offended. I like how Jesus didn't bristle when he was chewed out a little bit. And Mary, if you've ever been the younger sibling and there's been justice served in your behalf, boy, that feels good, doesn't it? The older sibling kind of catches it for giving it to you. I don't know this family well, but if they're like any other family, Mary's like, yeah, I'm staying right here. But I wonder what Martha's response was like. Now, in this story, Martha gets a bad rap almost every time. Because Martha should have been the one to sit at the feet of Jesus. She's too busy, she's too distracted, etc., etc., etc. Mary always is sitting at Jesus' feet. What is this one thing that Jesus is talking about? Again, in the book Desire of Ages, about the life of Jesus, page 525, the author says this: the one thing that Martha needed was a calm, devotional spirit, a deeper anxiety for knowledge and concerning the future, the immortal life, and the graces necessary for spiritual advancement. She needed less anxiety for the things which pass away. How much do you worry about stuff that won't matter a week from now? If it doesn't matter 6 months from now, it's not worth worrying about right now. We worry about so much stuff. She needed less anxiety for the things which will pass away and more for those things which endure forever. And I like this last part of this quote. This is really, really powerful. There is a wide field for the Marthas. If you identify with Martha, if you're kind of scattered and feeling busy all the time and you feel like you've just got to keep on going and you've got the schedule and that's just who you are, that's not necessarily a bad thing. She says here, there is a wide field for the Marthas with their zeal in active religious work. But let them first sit with Mary at the feet of Jesus. Let diligence, promptness, and energy be sanctified by the grace of Christ. And listen to this. Then the life will be an unconquerable power for good. When you do that, when you have a combination of Mary and Martha, then the life will be an unconquerable power for good. In Testimonies for the Church, Volume 6, another book that covers this topic, the author says this: all who work for God should have the Martha and Mary attributes blended. A willingness to minister and a sincere love of the truth. The blending of the two of these ladies, I think, is the key to what we should aim for. Mary could have probably helped a little more. She was kind of more of the feelings kind of a person. Let's talk about my feelings, about what I'm going through. Martha didn't have time to talk about her feelings. Martha was the busybody. Martha was so busy, she forgot to go hang out with the Creator in her living room. I think a combination of these two sisters is a healthy balance. Because a lot of time, those that are more like Mary forget to serve as much. And those that are like Martha more forget to spend that time with Jesus because they're so busy. Which one of these two ladies do you identify with most? Are you a Mary or are you a Martha? Our devotional time, our quiet time with Jesus, I think, is what will help us make it through life. Jesus' focus here in this portion is on about sitting and having that quiet time with Jesus. And I think for all of us in 2021, we struggle to have that time, that quiet time with Jesus, because our lives are just so busy and we're so swamped with everything that it's hard to take that time. It's hard to sit down and just be with Jesus for a little while and enjoy the quiet time. One of the things we're going to be doing on our youth trip in Moab when we're out on the river is we're going to be having quiet time, each one of the kids with Jesus. It's a beautiful open area, gorgeous. Just having some quiet alone time with Jesus, with our Bibles. It's one of the most rewarding things we can do. It's being just like Mary and sitting down and being with Jesus. Let's turn over John chapter 11. John 11, home of your favorite Bible verse when you were a kid. John 11:35. Anybody use that memory verse when you had to do a memory verse as a kid? All right, it's time to pick your memory verse. And you're like, all right, I didn't study for anything. It's looking like John 11:35 for this weekend. Shortest verse in the Bible. Shortest verse in the Bible. We see this family show up again. Now, a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary who had anointed the Lord, which was the story coming up, fragrant oil. Her brother Lazarus was sick. His sisters sent to Jesus, saying, Lord, behold, he who you love is sick. And Jesus heard that and said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Verse 5 shows Jesus' relationship again with this family. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Jesus loved this family. He heard he was sick. He stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. The disciples must have been wondering, what is he doing? Now, granted, it was kind of a dangerous trip. There were a lot of people where Lazarus and Mary and Martha lived that wanted to kill Jesus. And we see a little bit later on, Thomas is like, all right, if we're going to do this, let's all go and we'll die together. There were people angry enough with Jesus to kill him in Bethany. In fact, likely within Mary and Martha and Lazarus' own family, there were people that hated Jesus enough to kill him. Because when Jesus does finally roll into town, it is secretly told to Martha. She gets up and goes and meets Jesus. It's secretly told to Mary. She gets up and comes out. People think she's going to the grave to mourn. She's sneaking out to see Jesus because it's dangerous, even within the people that are mourning the death of Lazarus right now. We skip up to verse 21. Jesus shows up. Now Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Can you imagine having that conversation? Can you imagine that? And still there's just a kind of a little edge on her voice, isn't there? Jesus, if you had just come a little earlier, my brother, your best friend, wouldn't have died. There's a little bit of an accusatory tone there. But she continues on, verse 22, but even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And Jesus says to her, your brother will rise again. No doubt. Now this next piece shows me that Martha was not a terrible listener either. Martha was not always in the kitchen. She wasn't always cooking. Martha had spent some time at the feet of Jesus as well. Here's how we know it. Jesus says, your brother will rise again. Verse 24, Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again at the resurrection at the last day. Martha had been listening. She knew when she would see her brother again. I know I'll see him again at the resurrection. That's where he's going to be. I know he's resting in the grave. She had been listening. She had spent some time at the feet of Jesus. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. Whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And she said to him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come unto the world. She did not come to this conclusion by jumping to a conclusion. She had spent time with Jesus. And I think maybe Martha is starting to learn how to balance the busyness with her time at Jesus' feet. Verse 28, when she had said these things, she went her way and secretly called Mary, her sister, saying, the teacher has come and is calling for you. Now remember, this would be a very loud situation. When they had a funeral, not only the people that were hurt and grieving were there crying, they hired professional mourners. And in this culture, that blows my mind. If it was my brother's funeral, it would feel weird and insincere to have like a whole section of the church of people who on cue would be like, no, they didn't even know my brother, right? It would just feel insincere. But as part of their culture, they hired mourners to make it sound like a bigger deal, and that was just their culture. And so when it says that Martha secretly told Mary, more than likely it was just loud all over the place, and she whispered in her ear, Mary, Jesus is here. He's calling for you. And she slips out to go see Jesus amongst the bedlam of the hired mourners. Verse 32, it says, then Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, and she fell down at his feet again. Every time she sees Jesus, she falls down at his feet. She's looking up. She's looking towards her Savior. She's looking for guidance, for direction, for inspiration. Friends, if you go through tough times in your life, if there are situations where you're not sure what's going on, fall to the feet of Jesus and look up in his face. Look for your guidance from Jesus. Look for your inspiration from Jesus. Listen to Jesus. He's promised in the Bible that you'll hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. When your world feels like it's turned upside down or shaken and falling apart, do what Mary did. Fall at the feet of Jesus. Look up into his face. Get your inspiration from Jesus, and Jesus will help you make it through whatever it is you're going through. Mary falls at the feet of Jesus again. And Jesus sees her weeping. And again, these are his good friends. Jesus hasn't cried before this, really on record or in this situation. But remember, this was such a close friend. This home where he has felt safe to talk freely. A very, very dear friend. He's lost a good friend. But even though he knows it's not permanent, even though he knows what's about to happen, it still stings for Jesus. Jesus' eyes get misty. You know what it feels like to cry? I hate crying. I don't like it. Lip starts to quiver. Tears are falling up. Your gut hurts because of whatever it is you're crying over. That all happens to Jesus. Jesus is crying for his friend Lazarus. And they said, look how much he loved him, as they saw Jesus cry. Some of them, verse 37, it says, could not this man have opened the eyes of who opened the eyes of the blind, also have kept this man from dying? There are people in this area who are on the verge of belief in Jesus. They're just not quite there yet. And I think it's for these people that Jesus waited an extra 2 days. They're just not quite sure who he is. Wasn't this the guy who healed blindness? Surely he could have helped his friend out. They're almost kind of rooting for Jesus a little bit. Like, we were sure, but he should have been able to do something, right? People are chatting here and there. And it says, Jesus, groaning in himself, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and the stone lay against it. And Jesus says, take away the stone. Now, Martha chimes in again here. Someday, when I get to heaven, I think I'd like to meet Martha. This lady, this is a spunky lady, I think. She's the kind of woman who I think speaks her mind when she feels like it. She's a strong-willed person, I think. This is the second time where she's squaring off with Jesus. Second time. Jesus says, let's pull that stone away. And she's like, whoa, Jesus, don't do that. It's been a couple of days. Don't do that, Jesus. This lady is something else. In front of everyone, Jesus, pull the stone away. No. You don't want to do that, Jesus. And again, I think Jesus must have just smiled like, oh, Martha. Martha. Jesus says to her, verse 40, did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? He asks her a question. Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead man was lying. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and he prays. I wonder if they could see in the tomb. I wonder if people kind of crowded around a little bit more. I mean, this is very unorthodox what's happening right now. Very unorthodox. Everybody must be looking around like, what did he just say? He just asked him to do what? This doesn't happen. People are looking around, and now that it's open, the people that were probably saying, no, don't do that, they're probably like, well, let's take a peek. Let's see. You know, it's already open. We might as well look. I wonder if you could see him, or I don't know how it was, but I imagine the interest of everybody around there was kind of crowding in a little bit closer. What is Jesus going to do? And Jesus prays. He says, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. Do you ever start a prayer off like that? I think oftentimes we wonder if God hears us. I love how Jesus starts this prayer. He just thanks God for hearing him. First thing he does, Father, thank you so much for listening to my prayer. I love that. Maybe I'm going to change how I pray. Father, thank you that you have heard me. And I know that you always hear me because of the people who are standing by. I said this, that they may believe that you sent me. Now, when he had said these things, he cried with a loud voice. And I love this. I love that he was loud about this. He didn't say it like, all right, Lazarus, come forth. He didn't whisper anything. Jesus raises his voice here. It's a command. It's not a weak and wimpy voice here. He is commanding his friend Lazarus to come out of the grave. He's defeating death with a commanding voice. And if he can do that for Lazarus, he can do that for every single one of the folks that we've lost in our lives. He has the power to command someone to come alive. That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. Here is Lazarus, who's been dead for 4 days. Jesus has him open the tomb and he commands him, Lazarus, come on out of there. I would have loved to seen the eyeballs of every person standing there. What did he just say? What did he just say? And I wonder how long it took for Lazarus to come out, because you could have heard a pin drop, no doubt, in the moments between when Jesus calls Lazarus and Lazarus comes out. What was it like for Mary and Martha when they were there at the graveside? What was it like for them to have that moment where I know Jesus is the Son of God? Did he just call our brother out of the grave? There must have been a rustling, some noises as Lazarus is starting to get up. I always wondered, what were Lazarus' first thoughts when he opened his eyes? He's in the grave. He's wrapped in burial clothes. He opens his eyes for the first time. What is Lazarus thinking? Where am I? That was Jesus that just called me. I heard that. I remember I died. He hears the voice of Jesus. Life returns to his body. And out of the tomb comes Lazarus. Jaws everywhere are on the floor. What? And then smiles. Imagine Mary and Martha once they realize what's happened. They get all these burial clothes off of him. He's probably like, get this stuff off me. I can't move. I need to hug somebody. His sisters. And I can't imagine a scenario where Jesus doesn't give Lazarus a big bear hug. I can't. If you've been separated from your best friend for a long time, or what feels like a long time, what do you do when you see him? You give him a big hug, right? Jesus probably still has tear stains on his face. This is huge. Lazarus comes forth, the brother of Mary and Martha. We see in the next chapter the story of the expensive perfume. Same family. All three of them are there. Martha's mentioned there. She greets Jesus. Mary is kind of the focus of that story. She's at the feet of Jesus. She anoints his feet with the expensive stuff. Judas is not happy about it, calls her out publicly. Jesus defends Mary again. He has her back, says she's anointing him for his burial. This is an interesting family. By the way, that dinner had to have been a very interesting dinner because Lazarus is in attendance. Lazarus spent last week dead. If you were at that meal, you'd probably every once in a while be taking a bite and just look over and be like, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Take another bite. This is incredible. Never another dinner like it, right? Jesus loved this family. And here we have these two ladies who are so different from each other, these two sisters. And yet they both have attributes that we can strive for. You see, Mary is kind of the devotional one, the one who was always yearning to sit at Jesus' feet. We have to do that. If we want to make it through life and have any type of mental health and like hope for the future, we've got to spend time with Jesus. And when we do spend time with Jesus, we will have the service and the serving attitude of Martha. Like the quote said, all who work for God must have the Martha and Mary attributes blended, a willingness to minister and a sincere love for the truth. I love that. It's hard to have that quiet time with Jesus, isn't it? Our lives are so busy. There's something going on all the time. Your attention is wanted nonstop. In closing, there's a song by one of my favorite Christian musicians, a guy named Stephen Curtis Chapman. And he sings this song. It's called Be Still. And it says, be still and know that he is God. Be still and know that he is holy. Be still, O restless soul of mine. Bow before the Prince of Peace. Let the noise and clamor cease. Be still and know that he is God. Be still and know that he is faithful. Consider all that he has done. Stand in awe and be amazed, and know that he will never change. Be still and know that he is God. Be still and know that he is our Father. Come rest your head upon his chest. Listen to the rhythm of his unfailing heart of love, beating for his little ones, calling each of us to come and be still. I know that all of us have busy lives, but if there's one thing for sure we can take from this story, is that we need a little bit of more of Mary's attitude in our lives. To take that quiet time, to be still and spend time with Jesus and be inspired. To be still and spend time with Jesus and be reminded of the hope that we have. To be still and spend time with Jesus and have him take the fear and anxiety and worry out of our lives. Because really, isn't that the best life ever, where you're not worrying about anything? Someone once said, worry is a lack of faith in Jesus. Whew, that one stings a little bit, doesn't it? Worry is a lack of faith in Jesus. Whew. When you spend that time with Jesus, you won't be worrying near as much, because he will be reminding you that he's got this, and that everything that we can face in life, he can help us handle. Let's be a little bit more like Mary and a little bit more like Martha, the combination of the two of these sisters. I'm going to invite my family to come up and help me sing. Our final song that we're going to sing today is called Give Me Jesus. And the message of this song is really kind of the message of Mary's interaction